A hungry girl asked a wealthy man for his leftovers, but what he saw in her eyes changed everything. What began as a simple act of kindness turned into a miracle that transformed countless lives across generations. Who was this girl? Why did this millionaire risk his world for her? Stay with us till the end, because this is not just a story. It's a powerful truth that could change the way you see life, love, and the value of one yes. Before we dive into this unforgettable story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and tap the bell icon so you never miss out on our powerful, life-changing content. And don't forget to like and share, because these are not just stories, they're journeys filled with deep moral lessons that inspire, heal, and uplift. Join our community, where every tale helps us grow wiser, kinder, and stronger, together. May I have your leftovers, sir? But when the millionaire looked into her eyes, a miracle happened. It was a chilly evening in downtown Chicago. The kind of cold that slipped under coats and nipped at the bones. The sky was heavy with clouds, gray like old ashes. People hurried past with collars turned up and eyes fixed forward. Inside a warm, elegant restaurant, laughter and music floated through the air. Crystal chandeliers shimmered like frozen stars. Plates clinked, glasses sparkled, and servers moved with trained grace. At a corner table, a well-dressed man in his 40s stirred his coffee slowly. He was tall, sharp-featured, with silver at his temples and a deep crease between his brows. Leonard Whitmore, real estate tycoon, widower, father of two, and one of the wealthiest men in the state. He stared at his untouched filet mignon and barely noticed the warmth of the wine in his hand. Across the room, unnoticed by most, the restaurant's glass doors opened for just a second. A gust of wind swept in, and with it, a small figure stepped inside. She was thin, barely 17, her coat more of a threadbare memory than clothing. Her shoes were soaked, her cheeks flushed red from the cold. She did not approach the counter. She did not beg or speak loudly. Instead, she walked quietly to a table someone had just left. She picked up a half-eaten sandwich and a slice of untouched bread and tucked them into a cloth napkin. A waiter noticed and hurried over, his voice sharp with irritation. "You cannot do that. Leave. Now." The girl bowed her head. "I am sorry, sir," she whispered, barely audible. Then she turned, and her eyes met Leonard's. He had been watching. Something about her silence, her dignity, her hunger, it struck a chord so deep it left him breathless. Her eyes were large, dark, and full of something he had not seen in a long time. Not desperation. Not shame. But a quiet plea for kindness. He stood, walked over, and said calmly, "May I ask your name?" The waiter paused, confused. The girl looked up and answered softly, "Anna." Leonard bent slightly, his voice low and gentle. "Anna, may I offer you a warm meal? You should not eat from leftovers." She hesitated, then nodded once. He led her to his table, asked the waiter to bring her a new plate, hot tea, and a blanket. As they sat across from each other, Leonard noticed her fingers, red and cracked from the cold. She had not touched the bread. Instead, she waited politely for her meal, hands folded in her lap. "Where are your parents?" he asked gently. Anna looked down. "My mother died last winter. My father left years ago. I take care of my little brother. He is 6. Leonard felt something twist inside his chest. He imagined his own children, safe, warm, and asleep in their beds. He thought of his late wife, her voice echoing in memory, "Always give, even if you feel empty. Kindness fills back the soul." As the waiter brought food, Anna whispered, "Thank you, sir. I will share it with my brother." Leonard blinked. "You are not eating." "I will. But first, I want him to eat." He swallowed hard. He looked at her, this young girl, frozen by life's cruelty, yet burning with love. And in that moment, something shifted. Not out of pity, but because he saw a reflection of everything he once cherished. Her eyes reminded him of his wife's on the day they met, full of strength masked by quiet sadness. He asked her where she lived. A shelter nearby, too crowded, too loud. He asked to meet her brother. That night, Leonard drove Anna and her brother Jacob to a small guest house on his estate. He gave them warm beds, new clothes, food, and space to breathe. In the days that followed, he helped Anna enroll in school. He arranged a private tutor for Jacob. He visited often, not as a savior, but as a friend. His children met them and quickly bonded, drawing, playing, laughing. Anna began to smile more. Her shoulders relaxed. She started reading poetry again, something her mother once loved. Leonard found himself smiling too. The emptiness that had haunted him since his wife's passing began to soften. Not replaced, but filled with meaning. People gossiped. They questioned his actions. He did not care, because kindness had never been about approval. It had always been about connection, about choosing to see someone completely. Anna called him Sir for weeks, until one morning she looked at him with tears and whispered, "Thank you, Uncle Leonard." And he could not stop the tears from falling, because that was the miracle. Not the food, not the money, not the shelter. The miracle was being seen. The miracle was love reborn, in the heart of a frozen world. A true story, of how a girl's courage and hunger met a man's sorrow, and changed 2 lives, and 2 children's futures, forever. He began waking up with purpose again. Not just for meetings or boardrooms, but to check if Anna had eaten breakfast. To hear Jacob's morning giggle. To feel life moving in a way that felt real. Weeks turned into months. Spring tiptoed into the world with blossoms and rain. Anna started volunteering at the community library. Jacob learned to ride a bicycle in the gravel paths between the rose bushes. Leonard's daughter, Lily, braided Anna's hair each Sunday before church. His son, Max, taught Jacob how to build paper airplanes. The house, once echoing with silence, was full again. Not noisy, but alive. And Leonard, he watched, quietly, gratefully. He was not replacing his wife. That grief still lived in his chest, tucked like an old letter in a drawer. But he was loving again, in a different, gentler way. One evening, as twilight painted the sky in soft gold, Anna came to him holding a piece of paper. She had written something. She stood in front of him, nervous. He gestured to sit, and she read aloud. "Dear Sir, some people rescue others with money. Some with words. You rescued me with silence, with space, with dignity. You looked at me, not through me. You did not treat me like a wound to fix. You treated me like a person. That is the rarest kind of love. Thank you." Her voice broke near the end. Leonard took the letter gently from her hands. He said nothing. He only opened his arms. Anna leaned in. It was the first time she allowed herself to be held since her mother passed. And in his embrace, she felt something anchor in her. She was not drifting anymore. She belonged. A few weeks later, Leonard stood before a judge. Not for business, but for family. He was officially adopting Anna and Jacob, not as a savior, but as a father. Tears filled the courtroom. Even the clerk smiled through watery eyes. Afterward, Leonard took them all out for ice cream. Jacob laughed so hard he dropped his cone. Anna wiped it from his shirt and kissed his forehead. She looked up at Leonard. "May I have your leftovers, sir?" she teased with a grin. He laughed. "I will give you the first bite, daughter." And he meant it. Because now, his heart had no leftovers. Only a full table. Of family. Of love. Of second chances. And that miracle, it kept happening. In every shared breakfast, every bedtime story, every quiet walk in the garden. Because sometimes, the greatest miracles are not loud. They are born in small moments. In asking for leftovers. And receiving a life instead. Years passed like the gentle turn of pages in a beloved book. Each season added a new chapter to their lives. Anna flourished. She graduated top of her high school class. Not because she was the smartest, though she was bright, but because she worked harder than anyone else. Late nights with textbooks. Early mornings helping Jacob prepare for school. Quiet prayers whispered before every exam. And always, Leonard there, steady, encouraging, never pushing too hard, just enough. On the day of her graduation, she wore a soft blue dress. The same color as her mother's favorite scarf. She spotted Leonard in the crowd, his suit slightly wrinkled, eyes shining. After the ceremony, He hugged her tight. "You are everything your mother would be proud of." She did not respond with words. She simply rested her head on his shoulder. And they stood like that, wrapped in the quiet triumph of love. Jacob, now 10, had become a curious, joyful boy. He loved dinosaurs, baseball, and bedtime science documentaries. He called Leonard Dad, without hesitation. And Leonard always answered with a smile, a story, or a soft kiss to his forehead. One rainy evening, as thunder rolled over the hills, Jacob crept into Leonard's room. "Can I sleep here tonight?" he asked. Leonard lifted the covers and said, "Of course." Moments later, Jacob whispered, "Do you think God sent Anna to find you?" Leonard was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I think God sent all of us to find each other." The family grew not by blood, but by bond. Neighbors began to notice how Leonard, once reclusive and sharp, now smiled easily. How the children danced barefoot on the lawn. How love had repainted that old house with invisible strokes of joy. Anna received a scholarship to study social work. She wanted to help others the way she had been helped. She dreamed of opening a center for girls like her, lost, brave, and invisible to the world. Leonard offered to fund it. She refused. She wanted to build it with her own hands. But she promised to let him donate the first bookshelf. They laughed. But they both knew it was already being built. On weekends, they still had dinner together. Not in fancy restaurants, but around their old kitchen table. Bread always warm. Tea always sweet. Stories always shared. And Leonard, he aged, but not with bitterness. He aged with grace. With love as his daily breath. Some nights, he would sit on the porch with Anna beside him and Jacob asleep upstairs. He would hold his wife's old locket in his hand. He never forgot her. But he no longer wept. Because her love had made room for more. Anna leaned her head on his shoulder. "Do you ever regret that night?" she asked once. "The night I asked for your leftovers?" Leonard smiled. "No. That night gave me everything." The stars blinked above them. And in the quiet, beneath the hum of crickets and wind, two hearts beat in peace. And the miracle kept growing. Anna's 20s arrived like a sunrise, quiet but full of promise. She moved into a small apartment near the university, but came home every weekend. Jacob, now entering his teenage years, insisted she still read to him some nights. He pretended not to like it. But he always left her a note when she forgot. Leonard drove her to campus the day she moved. She had packed her clothes, books, and the first photo they ever took together. The one where Jacob's mouth was full of chocolate and Leonard looked awkward, surprised by joy. As they stood beside her door, Leonard held out a tiny wrapped package. Inside was a key. To the family home. "Just in case," he said. "In case you forget where you belong." Anna never used the key. Because she never forgot. Home lived in her heart, not just the walls of a house. University life was hard. She studied, worked part-time, volunteered at shelters. Some nights she came home with bruised hands and tired eyes. But every day she got up again. Because she carried her mother's strength. Leonard's faith. Jacob's laughter. One evening, at a fundraiser for the local shelter, she met Marcus. A tall, soft-spoken man with deep brown eyes and a scar along his jaw. He was a carpenter. He had built shelters for families in the South and never spoke about himself unless asked. Their first conversation lasted 4 hours. They talked about pain and purpose, about brokenness and how to build something new with the pieces. Marcus asked no questions about Leonard's wealth. He was only interested in the way Anna smiled when she spoke about her dreams. They began seeing each other. Slowly. Respectfully. He never rushed her. When Leonard met Marcus, he said little. But later, he told Anna. "He looks at you the way I used to look at your mother. Like he knows he found something he never wants to lose." Years passed again. Jacob graduated middle school and started writing poetry. Leonard bought him a leather journal with his name etched in gold. Jacob called him, "The only man I trust with my feelings." Anna finished her degree with honors. And without delay, she began working toward her dream. She started her own non-profit, Hearth, a shelter and education center for girls ages 10 to 20. Girls who were cold, scared, and brave like she once was. She rented a small building downtown, painted the walls with soft colors, hung pictures of strong women, and in the front hallway, she placed a framed sign. "No one is invisible here." Leonard visited every week. He helped plant a garden out back. He taught the girls chess. He told stories of real estate not as business, but as building homes that last. Anna married Marcus beneath a canopy of trees in the backyard. Lily and Max came home for the wedding, both grown and thriving. Jacob was the ring bearer, his tie crooked, his poem perfect. Leonard walked her down the aisle. Not as a replacement father, but as the man who had once said yes to a girl asking for someone's scraps, and ended up giving her a new life. At the reception, Anna raised her glass. To every empty plate that led to something full. To every cold night that made us appreciate warmth. And to the hearts that say, yes, when the world says, no. People cheered. Leonard wept. That night, he sat beneath the stars, hand in his wife's old locket, and whispered, "Look at what your love began." And far away, in quiet kitchens and noisy shelters, in the pages of Jacob's journals, in the warm beds of the girls at Hearth, the miracle kept growing. Leonard's hair turned fully white in the years that followed. But his voice remained steady, his eyes just as kind. He walked a little slower, smiled a little more. He said time had taught him not to rush what matters. Hearth thrived. Girls from every corner of the city came seeking refuge. Some had nothing but the clothes on their backs. Others had stories too painful for words. But they found shelter. They found safety. And most of all, they found Anna. She listened with her whole being. She remembered every name, every scar, every birthday. The girls adored her. They called her Miss Anna. Until one day, a shy 12-year-old whispered, "Can I call you Mama Anna?" Anna froze. Her eyes welled with tears. She nodded. And the name stayed. Leonard visited often, though he no longer drove. Marcus picked him up every Thursday. He brought fresh fruit, told stories from his youth. And always, always, stopped to check on the garden. It had become more than vegetables. It was a place of healing, where secrets were whispered between tomato vines, and forgiveness was planted beside marigolds. One spring morning, Leonard sat in his favorite chair in the garden. The sun was warm, the breeze gentle. He watched Jacob, now in college, reading aloud to two new girls at the shelter. He watched Marcus hammering a new bench into place. He listened to Anna, inside, giving an orientation to 3 new volunteers. And he smiled. He had once believed his story ended the day his wife died. That all he had left were business deals and boardrooms. But life had surprised him, with a girl who asked for his leftovers, and gave him everything in return. That afternoon, he closed his eyes for a nap, and in the silence of blossoms and breeze, his heart, full at last, slowed its rhythm. When Anna found him, his expression was peaceful. She fell to her knees beside him, pressed her head to his chest, and wept, not with bitterness, but with love. They buried him in the garden, beside his wife, not beneath marble, but under the tree he planted with Anna the year she graduated. At the funeral, Jacob read one of his poems. He gave without demand, loved without fear, built homes with his hands, and opened hearts with his tears. Years passed. Hearth became a network. 5 homes across the state, each named after a word Leonard once told Anna. Hope, shelter, grace, courage, begin. Anna and Marcus had 2 children, one adopted, one their own. Every Sunday, they picnicked in the garden by Leonard's grave. The children knew him through stories, through the photos, the laughter, the lessons their mother shared. And one day, when her daughter asked, "Mama Anna, why did he choose you?" Anna knelt down and whispered, "Because I asked for what most people are afraid to. I asked for a little, and he gave me love." And so, the miracle continued. Not in grand moments, but in the echo of kindness passed down. In warm plates, open arms, and the courage to ask. Because this is a real story. Of a man who had everything, and gave it. And of a girl who had nothing, and built a world with it. Anna's children, Emilia and Theo, grew up surrounded by stories. Not fairy tales, but true ones. Stories of pain turned into purpose. Of a garden planted with grief and watered with hope. Of a man called Leonard, whose love built homes instead of walls. Emilia, the elder, was curious and bold. She asked questions most adults could not answer. Why do people hurt? Can kindness be a superpower? Is Grandpa Leonard still watching us? Anna answered honestly. Yes, people hurt because they are trying to survive. Yes, kindness is the greatest power you will ever hold. And yes, he watches in the way flowers bloom after rain. Theo was softer, quieter. He spent hours in the garden with his fingers in the soil. He said the plants spoke to him. Not with words, but with patience. He once told Anna, "This garden remembers things." By the time they were teenagers, both children had spent countless hours at Hearth House. They celebrated birthdays with the girls who lived there. Helped with homework. Painted murals in the hallways. Emilia began writing a book at age 15. She titled it, What We Found in the Leftovers. It was a memoir, not just of her life, but of Anna's, Jacob's, Leonard's, and every girl who had walked through Hearth House's doors. Theo began studying botany. He dreamed of opening greenhouses in urban neighborhoods. Places where broken things could grow into beauty again. One summer, a new girl arrived at Hearth House. Her name was Soraya. She was angry, withdrawn, and refused to speak. She had been in 5 foster homes in 3 years. Everyone tried to connect with her. Only Theo succeeded. He did not ask her to talk. He handed her a packet of seeds and said, "Let's grow something together." For weeks, they worked silently. Until one morning, Soraya whispered, "Do plants ever forgive the people who forgot to water them?" Theo looked up, hands muddy. "Yes. If the sun still comes, they keep reaching." She cried into his shoulder. And from that day forward, she called him brother. Emilia's book was published on her 17th birthday. It became a national bestseller. Not for its style, but for its soul. It carried Leonard's legacy to the world. The story of a single act of compassion that changed hundreds of lives across generations. In interviews, Emilia often said, "My grandfather did not change the world with money. He changed it with a look. With the decision to see a hungry girl as more than a problem. He saw a future." Hearth House expanded to other countries. Anna traveled, spoke, trained teams. But she always returned to the original home. The one with the garden. The one where it all began. Jacob became a professor of literature. He wrote books too, but always said, "No story I create will ever be greater than the one I lived." When Anna turned 50, the mayor declared her birthday Hearth Day. A holiday in the city, dedicated to kindness, community, and safe places for all. That night, Anna sat in the garden under the stars, surrounded by friends, family, and former residents who had flown in just for her. Soraya stood beside her with tears in her eyes and said, "I am studying social work now, because I want to be someone's Leonard." Anna's voice shook. She looked up at the stars and whispered, "Thank you." And somewhere, in the quiet between night breezes and blooming roses, the miracle smiled. Because it never ended. It just kept passing from hand to hand, heart to heart, seed to soil. Years passed like petals drifting gently from a full blossom. The world changed, but the heart of the story stayed the same. Soraya became a counselor at Hearth House. She stood where Anna once had, welcoming frightened girls into warmth, holding trembling hands, whispering, "You are safe now." She did not try to be Anna. She simply tried to be present. And in doing so, she became something even more powerful. A continuation of love. Anna, now with silver threads in her hair, walked the halls with quiet pride. She had seen pain. She had lived through loss. But she had also seen what could grow when one heart dared to care. One crisp autumn morning, Anna stepped into the garden. The leaves danced in amber and gold. She looked at Leonard's tree, tall and strong, its roots deep in the soil of second chances. Jacob stood beside her. Emilia and Theo had brought their own children that day, all of them running through the garden, laughter echoing through the branches. Anna closed her eyes and breathed in the scent of earth, of memory, of miracles. She knelt beside the locket buried near Leonard's roots. Her voice soft. You gave me life when I was invisible. You taught me to see others before I saw myself. And now your story lives in every girl who dares to believe she is worthy of more. As the wind stirred the leaves, a single white bloom opened at the base of the tree. The first of the season. She smiled, and with a heart at peace, she whispered the lesson that carried through generations, the truth that turned pain into purpose. Sometimes, the smallest request, "May I have your leftovers?" becomes the doorway to someone's whole life. Be generous with your eyes, be kind with your time, and never underestimate the power of one yes. And so the story closed, not with an ending, but with a promise that every act of love, no matter how small, can become someone else's miracle. Moral of the story: no life is too broken to bloom again. All it takes is one heart willing to see, one hand willing to give, and one soul brave enough to ask.